The topic of Parshat Vayishlach that we're going to be dealing with is Dina and Shechem. There are tremendous moral issues. Simply, how can two brothers of the Shvatim, walk into a village and literally wipe out the village? It is very problematic. I don't have to explain why it's problematic, and it's quite obvious. And what I would like to do is at least try and understand a little bit more what is going on. And not be afraid to ask some very difficult questions, and hopefully maybe we'll have some type of understanding. We shall see. There's a lot of different approaches to understand this conflict, and maybe we'll just try and appreciate a couple of them. Let's begin reading at the top of page 1. So Dina goes out, which Chazal were very critical of, to essentially go out and, check out what's going on. Vayar osta Shechem ben Chamor, hachivi nesiaretz. So the Torah identifies that the person that sees her is someone of nobility, someone of stature, right? Not just some, yokel lodel, but some person. He's nesiaretz. He's some minister. He's some prince of some sort, and his name is Shechem. Vayikach osa. He takes her. Vayishkav osa yaneha. Sleeps with her. And the word inui usually, although it can be one or two things, inui often can be afflictor. It could also be mean some type of marital relations. Chances are, though, here in this context, it's not onata, right? Onasa, which is a pasuk in Mishpatim, but it could also be used as some type of affliction. Now, if you had to look at the end of pasuk beis, what type of relationship is it and why? The language that's being used, I think, is going to be very important. What's the language here? Vayikach osah v'yishkav osah v'yaneha. It's being done to her. She is very passive. What is her response? What is she doing? We don't know. She is being taken. Who else do we know in Chumash who gets taken? Esther gets taken, right? Vatilakach Esther al beis hamalchus. Esther is taken. She doesn't go into volition. She's not asked. They don't ask, what is your opinion? What do you want? No. They're not asked. It is not. No one's interested. The male is not interested in their opinion. Especially if it's vayaneha from the word inui, type of affliction, that will help us as well. Where do we see inui coming in? Bnei Yisrael will have inui for 400 years, the Torah says, right? By Ben Absarim, just people are going to suffer. Okay. Vatidbak nafsho b'dina bas Yaakov. He has some type of spiritual yearning, right? He longs for her. With Dina, interesting how the Torah identifies her as Dina bas Yaakov. When in Pasuk Aleph, how is she identified? Dina bas Leah. Vayahav es hana'ara, and he loves her. Vaydaber alev na'ara, and he, says sweet nothings in her ear, whatever that is. V'yomer Shechem l'chamor aviv lemor kach li es hayoda hazos liisha. Shechem turns to his dad and says, take this Yalda. How do you translate Yalda? This girl. Now, interesting, if you go back to the pasuk, it says, Vayahav es hanara. When he turns to his dad, he calls her a Yalda. What's the difference between a Na'ara and a Yalda?
Age.
Most probably age, right? Yalda generally is a youngin, whereas a Na'ara is usually someone who's older. Halachically, Na'ara is from the age of 12 to 12 and a half, and Yalda is often under the age of 12. I'm not saying that's the case here necessarily, but there's no question that I think it's trying to tell us something. Vayishma v'Yaakov, Vayakov shema ki timeis dina vito. Yaakov hears that his daughter was vilified. Ubanav hayu es migneo basadeh. His sons were out pasturing in the field somewhere. V'charish Yaakov v'am, and he's quiet. He says nothing until they arrive. Now, why is Yaakov quiet? Why doesn't Yaakov do something about it? What might be logical?
Maybe in shock.
Okay, it could be he's in shock. Is this a strategic move that he does? Or a non-strategic move? What do you think, based on the pasuk? It appears it's strategic, no? What does it say in the it's almost as if he's keeping silent, right? It's not an emotional one where he can't keep things inside, where he's forced to keep things inside. No, v'lo yuchlu Yaakov l'daber ki charapo. Right? We don't see that type of language. Right? It appears that this language is very much strategic, calculated. Okay? The Torah continues. Meanwhile, while Yaakov is waiting for the brothers to come in, Chamor goes out and meets Yaakov. What do you say to him? Excuse me, at the same moment that Chamor arrives, the brothers are arriving. They're very distraught and angry over, they just found out the news. After all, ki nevala sav Yisrael. What's a nevala? What's a naval? Is a villain. So villainous. Some villainous act was done. Be Yisrael. Now interesting. What do you mean be Yisrael? It says Dina. Does it say Dina? It doesn't say Dina. What's the Torah implying? How did brothers perceive this act? Why doesn't the Torah write be Yisrael? Why not write Dina? Very good. It looks like it's a communal issue. They take it as a family matter. It's not just what we did to our sister, right? It's much more than that. That someone slept with the daughter of Yaakov. This is not done. Chamor speaks to them. My son Shechem really has fallen in love with your daughter. Tenuna, O Salo Lisha, please give him for a wife. Vehis tachnu osana bivnosechem. Our daughters will marry you guys. Tisnulanu vesbenosenu dilachem. Basically, they'll get married to each other. Sons, daughters. Vitanu teishevu, and here you will dwell. Va'aretz yalifnechem shvu scharua vechzuba. We'll do business together. You'll have a hold on the land, right? Because there's a family connection when you marry into this family who has roots here. So have a hold on this land. And after all, guys, you don't have a hold on this land. You guys are nomads. You're wandering around the country. You are farmers. You're not farmers, sorry. You're shepherds. You're going from field to field. You guys aren't real residents. You marry into our family, you now become part of the fabric of society. You are real inheritors of this land. It's a great move for everybody. We all benefit. Vayomer Shechem el aviha ve'el acheha emtzachin beinechem asher tomru elai etein. Nu, tell me what you guys think. Interesting. Shechem speaks to her father and to her brothers. Interesting. It's the point of view of Dina. Harbe alai mo'ed mo'ed matanet v'tenak asher tomru elai tzenu li esa nahara li isha. So it's very interesting. I always find this interesting that he has to throw in another couple of psukim. Didn't he already give a spiel? No? They don't respond. Do you know how like when someone asks something and you respond to them, it's like, like restate it or add to it, right? So that's why I get this feeling here. Like they do it. He does a whole pitch, so then he goes on to this last pasuk. Oh, and by the way, you guys a lot of money. We'll write you a really big check, right? To a mohar. Mohar is some type of dowry, right? We'll give you a big dowry. We'll make it worth your while, so to speak. And what's the response? V'emru alehem. We're going to give our daughter to someone who's not circumcised? What do you mean? That's a terrible thing to do. We can't do that. It's totally inappropriate. Next. Ach, bezos lachem im tiu chamonu v'molachem kol zachar. She goes, you can do just have a bris. If you guys have a bris, deal's on. We'll give you our daughters. We'll have your sons. We can come with you. La'am echad. If you don't tishmu, if you don't listen to have a bris, we're out of here. Both Chamor and Shechem say, great idea. They go at bris. The Chamor and Shechem go back to their city, tell them what's going on, make it worthwhile. Let's just skip a little bit for time purposes. And all the men have bris milah. Pasuk, jump down, Pasuk Kafei. And on the third day, when everybody is in tremendous pain, Yaakov, Shimon v'Levi, the sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, Achei Dina, the brothers of Dina, because Dina and Shimon and Levi all share the same mother, not just the same father, right? Leah. Ish Charbo, the man of their sword, Ve'avu Aleir Betach, and they come to town. Ve'hergu Kol Zachar, and they wipe out all the males. Ve'schemor ve'schem b'no hargu l'ficharev, ve'chu es Dina. They literally come in like dun 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 dun, and they save the damsel in distress, and they wipe out the city. They wipe out the bad guys. The sons of Yaakov come and they take the chalalim. Vayavozu ha'ir asher timu achosam. What does it mean? What are chalalim? And what's vayavozu? What are those expressions referring to? So they loot. They take the booty. And they take the loot of the city. Right? Gold, the silver, the jewels, where they can find. Esona, that's Bekaram. And their cattle, and their sheep, and their chamor, their donkeys, they take it. And then, Kaftat, again, it repeats this pasuk. Kochelam tapam neshehem shavu vayavozos kol asher b'bayis. They pilgrimage, take everything. Now, pasuk lam. V'yomer Yaakov el Shimon ve'el Levi. So now, by the way, who ransacked the city? Where's the pasuk say? Who ransacked the city? Come on, guys, isn't it just so obvious? Ransacked the city. What pasuk does it talk about? Look at Kav Zayin. What does Kav Zayin begin with? Hello. What does Kav Zayin begin with? Bnei Yaakov. Who's that referring to? All of them. So that's a good question. Is that Shimon and Levi, or is that all of them? What do you guess? So you have to hedge your bet.
I wouldn't say it unless it was all of them.
Okay, so you could argue, well, if it's going to be just Shimon and Levi, right? Shimon and Levi. Right. What else could you argue?
Not when it first talks about them, but
in Kav, hey, what does it identify them as? Chushnei v'nei Yaakov, Shimon and Levi. So now you could argue it's Bima Katzir. We've already identified Bnei Yaakov, Shimon and Levi. Now we're just saying Bnei. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Do we see any mention of any of the other brothers here? We don't. They're totally out of the picture. What are they saying? What are they thinking? How old are Shimon and Levi? Well, let's do a quick math. Yeah? Is Binyamin born? Okay, the truth is Machlokes Rishonim when the story actually took place. What's strange? It's very strange that Reuven's out there. He's older, no? It's probably, we know Reuven has to be at least 9 months older than Shimon and Levi. Like 9 months older than Shimon, right? Because biology, right? That's 10 months, 11 months, maybe even a year. So, he's the oldest. Why isn't he there? There are those who want to argue that this story then proves that it happened after the whole thing that Reuven did with the beds of his father. And therefore, he's been ostracized a little bit. That's why it didn't take place. And that's Ibn Ezra. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. But it would make sense because why isn't he there? Regardless, there's another advantage to that. That therefore there was a delay of time, and since there was a delay of time, the brother's a little bit older. Because if you don't say that, if you say that this happens basically soon after they return to Eretz Canaan, you're in big trouble. Because if you have to calculate ages, it's very simple. How old is Yosef in next week's Parsha? We know he's 17 when he gets into that whole balagan with the whole selling him, that famous Hollywood thing, Joseph, right? So he's 17 in Joseph. So if that's true, there can't be too many years, right, between any one of the brothers. So it's very, very possible that the brothers are about 13, 14, 15 years old at this time. I'm not saying it can't be that these two guys wipe out a city, but it makes a little bit more sense if they're a little bit older. Regardless, they're not that old, Shimon and Levi at the time. And I would like to argue that it's just Shimon and Levi who wipe out the city. It just fits very nicely, because at no point in time do you really see the father even interacting with everyone, yelling at them that much, at least at this point in time. Let's continue reading just to finish up the story, because this is very important. Remember Yaakov Shimon vel Levi. Achartem oti lavisheni b'yoshvei haaretz. You have achartem oti. You may be in a very bad position. You've embarrassed me. You've in a very negative light. Lavisheni b'yoshvei haaretz. Embarrassed me by the local inhabitants. And the Kanani and the Perizi. V'animatemi spar. We are very few in number. V'nesfu alai. They could all gather up. And what could they do? V'hikuni shmartinu v'si. They could wipe us out. What? Yaakov Avinu turns to Shimon and he says, what you've done is so bad, now everyone else is gang up and wipe us out. What? Why doesn't he say, how could you trick people? How could you lie? How could you wipe them out? What? No, what's going on here? And then it ends with Vayomru Achzona Yaseh Achosenu. Could you turn our sister into a zona, into a prostitute? What is going on here? This is very, very strange. So is Yaakov giving them Musar? Is it not giving Musar? Were they right? Were they not? Were they justified? Not justified? It's a very strange narrative. We're going to look at a number of different opinions. This is a very famous opinion of the Rambam. It's right afterwards. The Rambam here is talking about the laws of non-Jews. Non-Jews also have what's called Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach. They have only one positive commandment, and that is according to Sheva Mitzvah Noach. It's actually very complicated. It's actually they have way more than Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach. Way more. But there's 7 special Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, but they still have to keep other things as well.
I think I've heard that it's not really 7 mitzvahs, it's 7
categories. Yes. For example, they're obligated for Kibbud Av V'Aim, not because of its Mitzvah B'nai Noach, because it could be obligated because of universal ethics. It's very complicated right now. But what I want to just point out is there's only one positive commandment in the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and that is setting up a Beis Din. Beautiful. With that, you'll appreciate this Rambam. V'keitzad mitzuvim hen al adinim. What do you mean? How are they obligated to set up a justice system? By the way, just because you have a justice system doesn't mean you're just. I mean, Nazis had courts too, right? Just because you have a government and a court system doesn't mean that you're like a moral, ethical society, right? Just want to put that out there. Chayavim lahoshiv dayanim v'shoftim b'chov plach u'plach ladun b'shesh mitzvos elim. Says the Rambam, you need our judicial system to uphold the other 6. V'asir sa'am, to warn the people. U'bren Noach sha'avar, and a ben Noach that transgressed al achas b'shava mitzvah Noach yareg b'sayif. If you transgress any of the 6 b'nei Noach or 7 b'nei Noach, you are beheaded. That is a punishment. And that is why everybody in Shechem, Chamoy, the whole city, were deserving of death. Why? Sharei Shechem Gazal. Shechem took. Vehem Ra'u. They all saw. V'yadu. V'lo donu. They didn't judge him. They let him get away with it. Ben Noach Neharag Barachad B'dino Kefan. And basically, the Rambam justifies why Shimon Levi allowed to wipe everybody out. What do you think about this Rambam? What do you think about this Rambam? Makes sense, doesn't make sense? Good argument, not good argument, justifies, doesn't justify?
Fair argument, but yes, with respect.
So if, very good, if it was okay, so why did Yaakov yelling at them for afterwards? Maybe he's not. He's just saying, listen, what you guys did was right, but now if everyone else kicks up on us, we get into trouble. So you could say, he didn't get upset at them. He's just saying, maybe. What doesn't this answer? Why go into the whole, have a bris milah? Why not go in the sort of place and want to get everybody out? You'd have to respond to that and say what? The whole bris milah thing was just?
To weaken them.
To weaken them, so Shimon and Levi, who are quite young, could wipe them out. How they knew that was going to work, I'm not quite sure. But the Rambam would have to try and justify Shimon and Levi's behavior. Okay, there's the next source, which is in Bereshis over there. It's quite a famous Rashi. Shimon v'Levi achim, chlei chamas mechoroseim, v'sodam al tavo nafshi, v'kalam al techay fodi, ki v'apam herdu ish Uvirtzonam igroshor. Aru rapam ki az vevrasa ki gashesach atem Yaakov afitzem b'Yisrael. There are those.
Sorry, where are we reading?
Right at the second, the bottom, the Bereshis, the second last source on the bottom of the page. Right? There are those who want to argue that, you know what? Yaakov does curse them. He curses them for what they did that was wrong. But those who want to say that these psukim are alluding to their behavior by Shor, by Shechem, and by Chamor. That's why he curses them. He says, Klei Hamas, they have kelim, which are of anger. Maybe it's referring to the swords. And Yaakov wants to distance himself from two of his sons. Could be. What I would like to do, though, is the following. I'm going to take a slightly different argument, and I'm going to spend the next 10-15 minutes trying to prove it. There's a lot to say on this topic. What I would like to argue is, when you do something which is morally questionable, you have to be very squeaky clean. This is not a good comparison, but I'm going to use it anyways. You just tell someone to stop talking. You need to be very careful. Because the moment you say one word, that guy or that gal that you shushed 6 rows back will be like, yeah, hypocrite. Right? What is it? The people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Be very careful. When you do something which is more, I'm not saying, by the way, that's morally questionable, that's not about talking shul. That's an analogy I want to draw. But when you do something that's morally questionable, you need to be super careful, cautious. The Torah emphasizes clearly a number of times that Shimon and Levi are the brothers of Dinah. Where was Reuven in this? You could argue that it's just the proof that it happened after the whole Reuven episode. Otherwise, I don't know where Reuven went. Maybe he's just not a good warrior. I don't know. But when you're doing something which is really questionable, you have to be so careful what you do. Point number 1. Point number 2. After the Jewish people defended themselves in the Megillah, it says at least 4 times, Uvabiza lo sholchu es yadam. The people in times of Shushan did not take from any of the spoils. Uvabiza lo sholchu es yadam. They could have. They were entitled to. What is the difference if you take from the spoils or if you don't take from the spoils? And when is the classic battle? I mentioned the Purim story, which is not the classic battle. It's the second most classic battle. But you tell me the most classic battle of where you're not taking the spoils. And what do you think the reason is behind it? What's the classic battle you can't take any of the spoils? Yericho. Why not? Tell Allah loy b'nei od. Someone tries to take from the cherem, he gets in big trouble, right? What do you think is the reason why God would say in the battle of Yericho, you're not take spoils? What's the message?
What, like the destruction? Not like,
Sorry?
Like the point is like destroying Yericho, not
Okay, true. Okay, good. What happens if you were to gain from the various booty and loot from Yericho? What's tainted? But I understand, Bnei Yisrael will take from other wars in the future. How come the first war that Bnei Yisrael fight, they're not allowed to take from the spoils? Why?
Maybe to show that they're doing it for a higher purpose.
Okay, very good. When you take from spoils, it shows that when you win a war, you win, you conquer land. It's part of war. It's politically correct. You beat somebody, you beat bad guys up, you think they're stuff, they're property. It's part of the rules of warfare. Not taking from the spoils by Yericho. You're showing that God, we don't deserve the spoils, because you know why? We didn't really fight the war. What did they show for Yericho? What did they do? They're the kafas. But they fought. Why did they don't deserve spoils? They didn't do anything. No. Taking from the spoils show, and not that it's wrong sometimes. It shows it's your human initiative, input, and energy. Therefore, you get to take and benefit from it. Kings would need the spoils a lot. You know that sometimes in the ancient days, not that ancient, Middle Ages even, kings would go to war, they couldn't have no money. So go to war, they couldn't pay your soldiers. But if you win the war, get your soldiers get. They have lots of money in gold and silver. So therefore you can't pay your soldiers, go to war, win, and then all of a sudden it's very economically beneficial if you win to go to war. Very much so.
You lose usually most of the soldiers are dead, so you don't have to pay them anyway.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are brewing. With that, we're almost ripe. Let's go to the bottom of page 1. When you burn down a city that serves Avodah Zarah, that's called a Ir Yidachas. You have a city that's totally off. They serve Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says you can't even find the mezuzah. I mean, like the scroll, not like the doorpost, right? What do you need to do? You need to wipe out the entire city. And here's what's interesting. Are you allowed to take anything? Look at the bottom of page 1. Ve'et kol shlalatik boats. Oh, toch b'chavav. V'sarafta ve'esh yasa'ir v'kol shalak kalila shalgecha v'yisat tel olam loy b'nei od. You cannot take anything. No benefit. So you tell me you get benefit from Avodah Zarah? Maybe. I think it's much more than that. You just wiped out your fellow Jews. You wiped them out. They all serve Avodah Zarah. This is fellow Jews. So what you want to show is you're not wiping them out to gain from it. Rahmanis, you're upset. You have pity. You have no choice. But to gain from it, you're going to gain. You wipe out a village, a fellow Jewish village, and now you're going to get their gold and their silver and their cattle. It's much more morally questionable. Turn the page. Top of the page. V'lo yidbak b'cha me'uma min ha'cherem. Don't have your hands touch the cherem, the spoils. L'man yashuv Hashem echaron ha'po v'nasan l'cha rachamim. V'yichamta v'erbecha l'shen yishbal l'vasecha. Make you more moral. Have you more mercy. Actually, a great line on this. But, we need sometimes this morality in order to help us. So we don't take the spoils. We don't take things that are not ours. Okay. And in fact, the Emek Davar, in the next source, even says, why you don't take the spoils? What makes you merciful? You did all these things that were, you murdered, you killed people. And he says that even killing anybody affects your moral status. Even a person in Beis Din has to kill someone because in Beis Din, you're still somehow morally affected by it. So Hashem gives you a bracha. I'll give you mercy. I'll make you more merciful. If you become more merciful, you'll lose that cruelty that you had because you just killed somebody. Anyways, the next narrative after Shimon and Levi, meaning the end of source 1, it ends with Vayamru achsona yaseh achosenu, and then is the next paragraph, chapter 35. Look how it begins. Vayamru Elokim el Yaakov. Ku malei Beis El. Go to Beis El. V'shei v'sham. Go there. V'naseh sham mizbeach. Build a mizbeach. Remember that mizbeach that you promised in the beginning of Parsha Vayetzeh after your dream? Right? Remember that one? Go to Beis El and now build this mizbeach. La El hanirei lacha b'varcha mipnei sevachim when you're running away. Vayomer Yaakov el Beis El v'kol asher imo. Hasiru es Elohei hanichar asher b'sachem. Remove the idols that you have. V'hitaharu. V'achlivu simlosam. Change your clothing. V'narkuma v'nale Beis El. And then we can ascend and go to Beis El. V'aseh shem mizbeach le'elo ne'oseh b'yam sarasi v'yi imadi b'derech asher alachti. V'yitnu el Yaakov eskol el v'yanichar. And they give Yaakov all these foreign gods. Here's them. V'tanizimim asher b'zneim and their jewelry. V'yitmon osam Yaakov tachas Allah. And he buries it under a tree. Sher shamchem. And then fear of people around, and they did not chase Yaakov. I have a question. Where did they get all this gold and silver and this Elohei Nechar from? Look at the Midrash. Vayomer Yaakov el Beiso, Zon Hashav, V'eskol asher yimor elu b'nei v'avada v'siru. Go down this underlined section. As Elohei Nechar asher v'zochechem, shelakhu yishchem. This Midrash is saying maybe it wasn't just Shimon and Levi who took from the spoils. regardless, we see from here that maybe, they were deserving to wipe out Shechem, Hamor, and everyone. Maybe because of the Rambam, they were immorals. Or maybe it was because they needed to trick them as the only way for them to defeat them. After all, taking a lady captive, defying her, is not a very moral practice thing to do. How accountable should everybody be? By the way, another thing which is important, don't think like they wiped out a village that had tens of thousands of people. These are all nomadic tribes. This is on a hilltop, right? You think Hill ever knows everyone else's business? Let me tell you, Shechem is much worse, right? It's a very small, everyone knew each other, it was a nomadic tribe, everyone knew everyone's business, right? My business is your business. I'm sure it's a very insular society. It wasn't like, everyone knew what was going on, the whole Dina thing, right? With the mayor, when the mayor does something, people find out. It can't remain a secret forever, like in Toronto. The mayor does something, so this is viral. And this is millions of people find out about it. I actually had a friend of mine in New Jersey. He messaged me. He goes, "What is with your mayor?" I'm like, "How do you know about this? Like, you live in New Jersey." It was on CNN. It has made international news, right? What Mayor Rob Ford did. He just doesn't remember because he was intoxicated at the time. I actually believe him. He doesn't recall doing any of those things because you know why? He was drunk or high at the time, or both. So the fact that he says I never did them, I actually believe that he really means it. He just has no recollection that he did them. By the way, if you are drunk, maybe you could say, I'm not in control of what I do. Why should I be responsible for my actions?
You shouldn't get drunk in the first place.
Okay. Maybe by the way, if alcoholism is a disease, and I get drunk, why am I responsible? God forbid someone has a heart attack or cancer, I'm not responsible. So if I have a disease called alcoholism, why am I responsible for what I do? That case is argued in many cases that people where they cause death.
Certain diseases that prevent you from being able to do certain jobs. Alcoholism prevents you from
functioning. So, but why are you throwing me in jail if I have a disease? That's terrible.
You should get treatment.
All right, that's it. For sure, you get treatment. No one got upset at Bill Clinton for what he did. Everyone crazy over Rob Ford. It is because Rob Ford is a drunk, alcoholic, and he's a liar. I guess I can lie. Bill Clinton is just a liar. Anyway, so what I think what's going on here, and again, there's many different ways to argue it, and that is the route that I want to take. That perhaps the brothers were justified in what they did and how they did it, for a variety of different reasons. The question is, though, the moment they take from the cherem, the moment they gain from it, economically, it puts a major shadow of darkness over what they did. Because now they have to be squeaky clean. And you gain from it? I'm not sure. I'm going to prove to you another way that questions their actions. And maybe to some extent, Yaakov reserved judgment, waiting to see what would happen in the future that would reflect on what they did. The Torah emphasizes, why does Shimon and Levi help Dinah? Why? Why do Reuben and Shimon? Sorry, why does Shimon and what does the rest identify Shimon and Levi as? Over and over again, it identifies them as the brothers of Dinah. Why? If you want to say, this is my sister, look what we're doing for her. We're defending our family honor, our mother's honor, our father's honor. We cannot sit and be dormant when she is being vilified. We must save her. And this is the only way to save her. This is what we have to do. Fine. Problem. According to Midrash, who's the one responsible for the ill treatment of Yosef? Look at the bottom of page 2. Vayaruo somerachok ubeterem nikra lehem vayisnaklu oso lamiso vayamru ish alachiv hinei bal achalamos halazeh ba. Rashi, on the psukim that relate to that relate to when Yaakov gives them bracha / klal at the end of his life. Ve'etza achas al Shechem v'al Yosef. V'yamru ish al achiv ata l'chu nargenu. Mihem. Who are these brothers that turned to each other and said, hey, the dreamer is coming? Im tamar Reuven or Yehuda. If you want to Reuven or Yehuda, hari lo yiskumu hari yigaso. They both said outright, don't kill him. Maybe Reuven wasn't there. And Yehuda said, let's sell him instead, right? So it couldn't have been that the one brother said to the other, let's kill this guy. It could have been Reuven. It could have been Yehuda. Im tamar b'nei shvachos. You're going to say it's the daughters of the shvachos. They didn't hate him so much. Shneimar was a pasuk. Al korchacha at the end. Shimon v'Levi shekaram avihim achim. They are the brothers of Yosef. If Shimon and Levi are such great brothers and they want to defend Dinah and they want to stand up for her honor, maybe Yaakov reserves judgment over them till able to see what happens later on in life. And later on in life, when he sees what they do to Yosef, it really does question what they did to Dinah. But he couldn't respond. He couldn't really say anything too much later on in Chumash when he has the complete picture. That's what Rashi there is quoting actually at the bottom of page 2. So we have a number of different approaches. Different Rishonim are more or less critical of Shimon and Levi. They wonder, the fact that Yaakov doesn't come out screaming, yelling at them, shows that to some extent Yaakov agreed with what they did. I mean, it couldn't have been that bad, or else, how could Yaakov almost defend them? The very fact that they take from the cherem begins to question the moral compass, and they don't defend Yosef. They forget defend Yosef. They're the ones behind attempted murder of their own brother. They're not such big, shall we say, big brothers in the end, because of what they did to Yosef. The fact that they were out there to defend Dinah maybe also casts a shadow of doubt, a shadow of suspicion of their actions in Shechem and with Chumah. So I just wanted to kind of look at all the different pieces of trying to understand what they did and how they did it. I think what's so complicated is, you can be critical, but why you're critical and how you're critical, I think is a quite sensitive balance, trying to figure out exactly what took place and what didn't happen with Shimon and Levi. I think in the end, we do not look at Shimon, interesting happened to Shimon and Levi, there's a bit of a split. Shimon, basically the shevet of Shimon over time kind of disappears and merges with Yehuda. It's Yehuda that becomes a great leader. We see throughout Chumash, right, that Yehuda becomes a great leader. And Levi, on the other hand, we see a big turnaround when it comes to Levi. Eventually becomes the tribe, the shevet, that really does take the mantle of leadership as well. So I always say that it's not just about the firstborn. Maybe Reuven kind of doesn't come through. It's about Levi. There's a process. Levi represents that tshuva. You can kind of change who you are and become the great defenders, right? Like look with Chet Egel, what Levi becomes. And at the same time, it's also Yehuda, throughout especially the Yosef narratives, it really shows a very strong character. Although he does make a mistake, he wants to sell him. It is also the tshuva process of Yehuda, who we see by the end of Chumash, by the end of Bereshis, to really also turn things around. But those narratives and those stories, and try to understand them, God willing, we're going to start beginning next week, trying to understand a little bit more about the Yosef story, the Yosef narrative. Although we might have to take a week or two to talk about Hanukkah, which is important. Also happens to follow during the Yosef story. It's every year. I just happen to this year it's like it's in November as opposed to in December. But okay, we'll make it work. Have a meaningful Monday, everybody. Mr. Shem, see you next week, same time, same place.